Hello, my friends. Hello, and welcome once again to stately Vaughan Manor, where it is time for my weekend reading report. Yes, it's the weekend reading report. Roger and I have returned for the report, which we haven't done for what? What has it been? Like 2 or 3 weeks? We can't remember how long it's been since I've done one of these, and it's basically because I haven't had much to report. I don't have much to report now, but I thought I'd better do one and talk about what I have been reading since the last time I did one of these 2 or 3 weeks ago, or whenever it was. And there are a couple things to talk about, so yeah, let's talk about them. First of all, let's talk about the Superman Challenge. My challenge to read Superman comics every day of my life until eventually something will happen and I won't be able to. But we'll see how long it lasts. So, I have been reading Superman comics. I started out with the new #1 issue of Superman because DC Comics has to redo the Superman series like always after whatever big event they have every month. And so that was decent. I was happy with that. It was a good issue of Superman. And the real Superman, is back, the original Superman, as we knew he would be. And then the last couple issues of Action Comics have been pretty good. I read those. And I read all those digitally, which I'm moving away from. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But as for what I did read, I think the standout stuff, first of all, was World's Finest. This is the new World's Finest series. This is by Mark Waid and Dan Mora. It's fantastic. I had a good time with this book. The artwork is really good. The story is excellent. It's Batman and Superman. What more can you want? They're both presented very well. And Batman has my favorite Batman costume in it. This is my favorite Batman costume with the yellow circle around the bat, because that's what I grew up with. Because this story takes place a few years ago, apparently. Whenever that was. It has the original Robin in it. And Mark Waid really gets these characters, man. He understands Superman. He understands Batman. He knows how to write them. And this is a tremendously entertaining comic. Really enjoyed it. So, World's Finest. I will be talking about this sometime soon on an Epic Comic Book Wednesday. So I read that, and then I also revisited this is Man of Steel Volume 1 of the hardcover set. There are 4 volumes in this Man of Steel hardcover set. I read the first one. And I enjoyed it. This was the series that got me into Superman back in the 80s. This series has its issues. Well, it has its issues. So, it has some problems, this one. First of all, some of the decisions John Byrne made as far as revamping the origin are a little... He got rid of a lot of the Superman mythology, which took a long, long time to get back. Of course, it all came back, more or less. No Krypto, the Superdog in this, which is a bitter disappointment. Great character, Krypto. And another thing is that John Byrne has a real hard time writing realistic dialogue, like people talk in a way that nobody would ever talk ever. And there's some issues like that, but I enjoyed it. I do still find these stories entertaining, and I think that John Byrne does get one important thing right, in that he understands the character of Superman for the most part. The Superman that appears in here is just a good, decent guy who just wants to use his powers to help people. And as a character, I think he gets Superman right, even though he gets a lot of things around Superman wrong. So this was, it was entertaining reading this again. Of course, the best parts of this are not the John Byrne stuff, but the Marv Wolfman and Ordway stuff. That stuff is really good. The Jerry Ordway artwork is fantastic. Jerry Ordway just does fantastic. He does a fantastic job on Superman, or he did. He did the Adventures of Superman comic book. Look at that. That's pretty cool. So yeah, this was fun. So I read that, and I'm just starting to read this, World's Finest. This is the original World's Finest. This is the Silver Age stuff. So yeah, this is going to be cool. The Silver Age World's Finest. And I finally started to read the EC Comics stuff that I said I was going to read. I've started to read this. I read the first issue. There's 6 issues in this trade paperback. I'm going to be reading more of that this weekend, hopefully. So that's all the comic stuff I've been reading. And now let's get on to the books, which there aren't many. There's The Forgotten Planet. There are basically 2 books to talk about today. There's The Forgotten Planet, which I read for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. This was the February pick. This is Roger's February pick for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. Every month we'll be talking about a book that you can download for free from Project Gutenberg. All the books we'll be talking about in Roger's Cheap Old Book Club are in the public domain, including this one, Forgotten Planet, which I'll be doing a video on in the very near future, since the month is almost over. It's basically it's a fix-up novel that takes some stories from the 1920s and a story from the 50s. And Murray Leinster, who wrote this, put the stories together to form a novel, which is basically the story of a forgotten planet where the mighty Burl leads his people to victory against giant bugs. It's entertaining. It's an entertaining book. So I'll have fun talking about this in the very near future, but this is the first thing that I read. And this was book number, for my 500 book challenge, if you're keeping score, I think it's book 31. I think. So one thing about the 500 book challenge, I did take a book off because I read it digitally, and I decided to switch over to only reading physical books for the 500 book challenge. But then I had a long email discussion with somebody who said basically, you can't change the rules after you started. You were counting ebooks and now you're not. What the hell is that? And he made a good argument, actually, this person I was speaking to on the email. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. I can't just change the rules like that after I already started. So I did put actually there were 2 books I read as ebooks for the 500 book challenge. So those are back in there. But I'm not going to be reading any more ebooks in the future. I'm just going to be reading the physical books I have, because of the nitpicky issues I have with digital rights management and Amazon and all that stuff, which I've already talked about at length. So I will count the ebooks I've already read as I did at the beginning, but in the future I doubt I'll be reading any more ebooks. I probably will only be reading the physical books that I own, and man, do I own a lot of them, including this one, which I've been reading for a while. I've been spending a lot of time with Thomas Cromwell in Hilary Mantel's Wolf Hall. This is not a gigantic book. It's only 600 pages, but I've had so little time to read that basically the last couple weeks I've just been reading a little bit of this every day. I've been reading for 20 minutes every day during the work week because my life has been that busy. And even on the weekends, you think you'd have time, but no, all that stuff that you didn't do during the week because you had no time to do it, then you have to do it on the weekend. And that cuts into your very important reading time as well. It kind of sucks. Life does sometimes. So I've been reading Wolf Hall, and I'm almost done with it. Well, I'm on page 438, so I've got 100 and something pages left. I should be done with this within a day or 2, hopefully. And I've been enjoying it quite a bit. This is one of those books that's gotten mixed reviews. It all takes place from the viewpoint of Thomas Cromwell. It's all in present tense. So basically you're walking around in Thomas Cromwell's head. It's interesting the way it's written. It's kind of a challenging book in certain ways, just because of the way Hilary Mantel wrote the thing. Sometimes I think it's a bit more challenging than it really needs to be. I'm not sure the style in which she wrote it is always successful, always, but it's really an engaging piece of work. And there are scenes in here which are just incredible and beautiful and very interesting. This is a very interesting historical novel. It does what it's supposed to do in that it does put you in this time and place that she's writing about. Thomas Cromwell, her version of Thomas Cromwell, is interesting. He's an interesting character, a strong character. Even reading it, sometimes it's hard to know exactly what his motivations are in the book. Sometimes I wonder, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? He's in a tremendously dangerous position, Thomas Cromwell, as he starts off as an assistant to Cardinal Wolsey, and then the cardinal falls, and he sticks with the cardinal. Cromwell does, which is a kind of a dangerous thing to do, yet it is his very it's his loyalty to the cardinal that Henry VIII, the king, admires. And so Cromwell eventually starts working for the king because the king really trusts Thomas Cromwell, which is a dangerous thing to do because, you know, he's all powerful, this king, and if he decides he wants you to die for whatever reason, well, you're dead. And we all know what happens to Thomas Cromwell in the end. So it's interesting reading this and reading at this point Thomas Cromwell's rise to power, knowing how he ends up, and just knowing, man, you should have found another job, basically. But it really well written and interesting book. I'm enjoying it quite a bit. And yeah, 100 and something pages left. I'm glad actually there's another couple books in this series because I'm enjoying it that much. It'll be fun to see how it goes along. I mean, historical novels are interesting that way. You know, when they feature, as this one does, historical people as characters, you know what's going to happen to them. And it's seeing how the worlds and lives are presented and how what happens to them. That's the interesting part. And Hilary Mantel gets that right. So yeah, Wolf Hall, enjoying it. It's been taking me forever to read though, just because I've been so busy. So like I said, I should be done with that within the next 2 or 3 days, hopefully. And then it's back to the Edgar Rice Burroughs deep dive with The Girl from Ferris's. The Girl from Ferris's, a change of pace for Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is not an adventure novel. This is a drama. It's a dramatic novel, as far as I understand, about, well, the girl from Ferris's, who is a member of the oldest profession. And Roger, even though he's been around forever, still won't tell me what the oldest profession is. I guess I'm going to have to read about it in this book. So yeah, The Girl from Ferris's. And after that, if I have time this month, I'm just going to move right on to Thuvia, Maid of Mars, the next book in the Edgar Rice Burroughs deep dive. I remember this book being really, really good, although it's been years since I've read it. So I'm looking forward to continuing with the Barsoom series, the Martian series. And then that'll probably close out the month. Except that I have to read this, and I'm looking forward to reading this. This is the March 1951 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. And look at that beautiful cover. So beautiful. And so I will probably be reading this next weekend, probably, unless I start it sometime during this week. The Astounding Science Fiction Project, every month, I will read an issue from 1951. And it's March, so I'll be reading the March issue. The March 1951 issue of Astounding Science Fiction. And yeah, look at that. I can't wait for that. I read the first 2 issues and they were pretty much great. I enjoyed them very much, at least the fiction. And this one, no Dianetics on the back, only plastic seat covers. So that should be fun. And then, after that stuff, it'll be back to Roger's Cheap Old Book Club with the new Arabian Nights by Robert Louis Stevenson. And so that is the April book, the book for April for Roger's Cheap Old Book Club. I guess that's everything. Like I said, it wasn't much, just because this month has just been, it's been kind of like that. It's been like that. I'm hoping next month is a little less crazy, but I'm not counting on it at all. Okay, guys, that's all for today. I will catch you next time.